One of the best and most convincing pieces of evidence that extraterrestrial civilizations have visited Earth could be the epic Nuremberg space battle of April the 4th, 1561. It was recorded either in 1561 or 1566. Different sources provide different information. All the retellings of this story focus on the woodcut picture and a vague summary of events that occurred that day. The emphasis is always on crashed spaceships and space battles. Almost everywhere you read or hear the story, it goes like this. The inhabitants of the city woke up early on an April morning and saw a staggering celestial show that looked like a real space battle. This story sounds even more convincing when you find out that some objects allegedly fought for quite a while. And some even crashed. You can see them in the lower right corner. Look at the picture once again. Orbs and crosses fighting, a giant arrow and bizarre tubes, crashing ships. Wow, that had to be a spectacular cosmic battle. To make it all more plausible, Hans Glaser, the artist behind the woodcut, was a very real person. He really did woodcuts, and this one is indeed from the time and place that it says it is, meaning it's not fake, and it does depict a real event that had its own witnesses. For all intents and purposes, it looks like very convincing proof of aliens visiting us, but don't get your hopes up. A superficial perusal of facts seems to confirm an extraterrestrial presence on our planet. But the most likely explanation is much more mundane. The Nuremberg 1561 UFO battle is just an atmospheric phenomenon called a sundog, or parhelion. A sundog is a concentrated spot of sunlight that can sometimes be seen to the right or to the left of the sun, or even on its both sides simultaneously. Sundogs often appear as a pair of patches of light with subtle colors at the same altitude over the horizon as the sun. They can have a variety of forms, from colorful spots to patches of light so intense and bright, it looks like there are two additional suns in the sky. Sundogs are weird looking enough to make it seem that something scary and otherworldly is going on in the sky. At the same time, it's just our planet's atmosphere or ice in the upper parts of the sky acting as a prism or reflective device. This prism makes the light from the sun or moon do weird things. This image can help you visualize the phenomenon. Apparently, Nuremberg had the perfect conditions for this phenomenon to occur. If you examine the depiction of this event and compare it with modern pictures and videos, you'll soon realize that a sundog is indeed a more likely explanation than the galactic empire paying us a visit. Let's find the proof of this statement in the translated description of these events and in the woodcut picture itself. First, the sun showed and was seen with two blood-colored half-round strokes, like the diminishing moon right through the sun, and in the sun, above, under, and on both sides, stood blood-colored and partly bluish, or iron-colored, also black-colored round orbs. Now here's the photo of a sundog. It has a halo surrounding it, and a red orb. And if we have at least one red orb, there could be others showing up during other events. Plus, keep in mind that sundogs are like prisms. So, depending on how light is reflected, there could be multiple colors present during such a phenomenon. Now, referring to circled plates mentioned in the description, those could be halos. For example, this sun halo looks vaguely plate-like, and it seems to be linked to other sun halos. And indeed, people have seen halos with multiple orbs. Some of the orbs could have taken a cross-like shape. If we watch some modern videos of sundogs, we might notice that the orbs on film are sun-colored. But since the Nuremberg event happened between 4 and 5 a.m., the clouds and the sun could have had reddish and orange hues. As for the fighting, it could be as simple as one shape moving a bit and changing shape along with the movements of the sun. It could have looked as if it was pushing the other shapes out of the way. Do you agree with the scientific explanation? Or do you prefer to think that Earth was visited by guests from a galaxy far, far away? Write your opinion in the comments.
According to the theory of panspermia, life could have been brought to Earth by a meteorite, comet, or asteroid from a different region of space. At the moment, this idea remains purely theoretical. But let's figure out if it could actually turn out to be true. Traditionally, exobiologists, those who are focused on searching for life outside Earth, have been trying to explore the possibility of life on Mars or in the subsurface oceans of Saturn's and Jupiter's icy moons. But simple life could be much more widespread. It could be drifting through interplanetary space right now, in the form of dormant bacteria and spores. Several scientists have noted that the ultra-harsh environment of space is likely to severely damage the DNA and RNA of such spores and microorganisms. Others believe that since enough microbes could be traveling in a dust cloud, some of them could survive in their original form. There are several types of panspermia. For example, lithopanspermia proposes that some kind of microbic life could exist in debris blasted into the cosmos after planetary collisions with comets and asteroids. Radiopanspermia claims that organisms might be able to travel through space with the help of radiation coming from stars. But in this case, it's unclear how the effect of dangerous ultraviolet and X-ray radiation, combined with the vacuum of space, doesn't totally destroy microorganisms. There's also pseudopanspermia. According to it, organic building blocks of life appear in interstellar clouds of dust. They get transported to the surfaces of planets, and life starts developing there. It sounds really fascinating, but is there any evidence for the panspermia theory? Well, there have been a few orbital experiments. For example, from 2008 to 2016, the samples gathered by EXPOSE, special equipment mounted outside the International Space Station and dedicated to astrobiology, were exposed to the conditions of space. After that, they were returned to Earth from the ISS. It turned out that some of them had survived those severe conditions. There was even a case when 100% of bacterial spores placed in Mars-like conditions were still capable of life. Also, some seeds survived and were later grown as plants on Earth. There have also been exostack experiments on the U.S. Long-Duration Exposure Facility satellite and biopan experiments on Russian photon capsules. They have shown that with minimal protection, spores, lichens, and even minuscule animals, such as tardigrades, might be able to survive in space for as long as several years. A piece of Surveyor 3 lunar lander was brought back to Earth in 1969 by the Apollo 12 mission. Shockingly, it contained an Earth bacterium that had survived unprotected for more than 2 years on the airless surface. At the same time, this bacterium could have come from laboratory contamination on arrival back on Earth. The Indian Space Research Organization carried out a search for space microorganisms too. It was done at stratospheric altitudes via balloon flights. The results showed that living interplanetary cells existed in air samples taken from heights of above 25 miles. Normally, air from lower levels of the atmosphere can't be transported there, so this discovery seemed to prove the theory of panspermia. But in 2010, NASA atmospheric sampling before and after hurricanes proved that under certain circumstances, Earth bacteria could actually be transported very high into the upper levels of the atmosphere. One of the main arguments against panspermia is that if this theory was correct, all life found throughout the solar system would have a common origin and share main biochemical characteristics like genetic code. It doesn't sound plausible. Many specialists believe that only the presence of astronaut explorers on the surfaces of, let's say, Mars, Europa, or Enceladus can properly solve the question of life in the solar system. They can compare any life forms found with Earth-type life, which can turn out to be a real test of panspermia. In any case, until probes finally find direct proof of spaceborne life, the panspermia theory will remain unproven. We could use one of the largest lasers in the world to detect alien spaceships. If aliens existed and managed to make a spacecraft as huge as Jupiter, our equipment could probably detect it using the ripples its warp drives would produce in space-time. You see, an enormous spaceship is bound to produce gravitational waves while moving around. You can read about a warp drive, also called a drive-enabling space warp, in science fiction. This device distorts the shape of the space-time continuum and is one of several ways of traveling through space. It's often described as similar to hyperspace, a faster-than-light method of interstellar travel. A spaceship equipped with a warp drive can travel at speeds greater than the speed of light by many orders of magnitude. But unlike some other fictitious faster-than-light methods of travel, like a jump drive, it doesn't permit immediate transfers between 2 points. Instead, it involves a measurable passage of time. A spacecraft using a warp drive would still keep interacting with objects in normal space, and produce gravitational waves too. That's why, if any extraterrestrial gigantic spacecraft traveled through our galaxy, the Laser Interferometer, Gravitational Wave Observatory, LIGO, in the US might be able to detect it. Its equipment could search for the ripples in the fabric of spacetime left by the spaceship. The bigger an object is, the larger gravitational waves it would leave. Planets, neutron stars, and even black holes produce quite prominent ripples. For the first time, such space-time ripples were directly detected in 2015. And since then, scientists have been getting better and better at spotting gravitational waves. New calculations published some time ago suggested that LIGO could look beyond conventional sources of space-time ripples. The authors of the study claimed that colossal alien spacecraft traveling at high speeds or pushed along by warp drives could also produce the telltale vibrations. The LIGO detector notices gravitational waves from the tiniest distortions they make in spacetime when passing through it. The observatory consists of 2 intersecting L-shaped detectors, each with 2 arms that are almost 2.5 miles long. They also have 2 identical laser beams inside. The experiment is designed in such a way that if a gradational wave passes through our planet, the laser light in one arm of the detector gets compressed while the other expands. It creates a minuscule change in the relative path lengths of the beams arriving at the detector. At the same time, the warpings of spacetime that even the largest gravitational waves make are barely noticeable. They're often the size of a few thousandths of a proton or neutron. It means that LIGO is incredibly sensitive and requires precise maintenance and calibration. To check how far this sensitivity can stretch, researchers made calculations of the smallest object that would produce clearly detectable gravitational waves on Earth. Apparently, it would still be pretty big. To be detectable by LIGO, an alien spacecraft would need to weigh roughly the same as Jupiter, be within 326,000 light-years away from Earth, and travel at 1/10 the speed of light. Could spaceships of this scale and speed exist? It's unclear, but hopefully, scientists will be able to squeeze down the ship's size to slightly more reasonable proportions thanks to the increasing sensitivity of gravitational wave detectors. For example, in the mid-30s, the European Space Agency's Laser Interferometer space antenna is going to be deployed. Scientists also think that advanced alien warp drives could create gravitational wave patterns distinguishable from natural sources. If detected, these alien waves could prove at use with answers to how to reverse engineer the technology. All because the shape of the gravitational wave signal is dependent on the trajectory of an object. Once a burst signal is detected, we could attempt to figure out the qualities of the transportation mechanism used there based on the shape of the gravitational wave signal.
How about I tell you that aliens might exist? I know it probably goes against everything you believe in, but it's a new model of the universe that could explain how intelligent life spreads and distributes. This model makes lots of predictions. For example, we should expect to meet another civilization at some point. It also mentions our chances of starting to get messages from aliens, or even becoming an interplanetary civilization ourselves. This model also explains why we haven't met other space civilizations yet, considering the huge number of stars and galaxies in the universe. But let's go into detail. The main assumption of the model is that, at one point, a civilization existing in the vastness of the cosmos can become grabby. You see, there are 2 types of civilizations. Quiet aliens don't actually try to expand. Neither do they change much. And after some time, they just disappear. That might be the reason why we don't have any data about them. And all that is left to do is to make speculations about their existence. But there are also loud aliens. They supposedly keep spreading really fast until they meet other space civilizations. The model also calls these loud aliens grabby. That's because they expand from their home planet at a fraction of the speed of light. They also make significant and visible changes wherever they travel, and they last for a really long time, too. Why might we suppose that grabby aliens exist? Because their existence may be the most plausible explanation for why humanity appeared so early in the history of the universe. See for yourself. The current date is 13.8 billion years after the Big Bang. Small stars can burn their cosmic fuel for up to 1 trillion years. And according to the standard model of the origin of advanced life, it's more likely to appear at the end of the longest planet lifetimes. Well, grabby aliens might be to blame for our early appearance. Such civilizations could set deadlines for others. If such aliens indeed exist, they will occupy most of the observable universe really soon. And when they succeed, no other civilizations will be able to appear, because all the habitable planets will already be taken. A civilization like ours, advanced but not grabby yet, could only appear early, because later it wouldn't have a chance to do it. There's another reason why the idea of grabby aliens seems plausible. Look at life on Earth, like humans. Aren't we grabby in many ways too? Species, cultures, and companies tend to expand and occupy new niches and territories as fast as they can. For example, species spreading on new territories get access to new resources, and thus increase their population. Why shouldn't we expect the same behavior from extraterrestrial civilizations? The main author of this model, Robin Hanson, was also the first to introduce the idea of the Great Filter in 1996. According to the Great Filter theory, the universe is filled with countless life forms, but people haven't stumbled across any of them yet because somewhere there is a Great Filter. The main purpose of this filter is to stop and finish those civilizations that advance to the level of star colonization. Suppose that this idea is true. There are 3 possible scenarios for our civilization. The first one, we're unique because we have passed the Great Filter. Other civilizations haven't managed to make it this far. The second scenario goes like this. We're among the first potential colonizers, before the conditions in space were too harsh for life forms to leave their home planets. In this case, chances are high that we'll soon encounter other civilizations. And the third scenario is quite worrying. We haven't reached the level of technological development that is advanced enough for the filter to locate us. This means that we haven't passed the filter yet. In other words, the trial is still ahead, and it's a big question if we manage to pass it.
Without knowing languages, people from different countries won't be able to communicate with one another efficiently. And imagine if some extraterrestrial civilization sent a message to Earth. How would we figure out their intentions? Like, do they want to get to know us better? Or is it a warning about a full-scale intrusion? It must be terribly hard to bridge the gap between us and creatures whose minds, bodies, and habitats are totally different from ours. So, to practice decoding potential extraterrestrial messages, an artist-led group created a mock message from stars. It was the most alien missive the world had ever seen. Even though it was written for humans by humans, it was as non-human as possible. The message was sent from Mars to Earth, and 3 observatories detected the transmission 16 minutes later. Unfortunately, so far, no one has deciphered the message, but many have been trying to do it. There are only 3 people in the world who know what the message means. One of them is the project's founder, Daniela De Paulus. She and 2 other co-authors created the message after consulting with scientists, poets, programmers, and philosophers from all over the world. The main challenge for them was to get rid of anthropocentricity to make the message as realistically alien as possible. So the team immediately ruled out any kind of language-based communication. Even though now they refuse to confirm or deny that the message contains text. The creators were also considering using mathematics. Yes, the fundamental concepts of this science are universal, but different cultures may represent math differently. De Paulus and her team struggled to compose the message for years, experiencing massive writer's block. But eventually, in 2019, the idea was formed. 3 years later, in 2022, a major breakthrough occurred when the team drew inspiration from a short story called a sing in space. And a month before the transmission, an astronomer joined the team, adding a mathematical touch to the message to make it more universal. Since the first announcement, the project has attracted loads of puzzle lovers. They started to exchange ideas, hoping to solve the mystery. Some of them were among the first people to extract the raw message from the ExoMars orbiter's broadcast. It was a 40-gigabyte string of numbers interwoven with the alien message. If it had been real, it would have arrived unannounced, of course. But in this case, the signal came at a precisely scheduled time. Now imagine peeling layers off an onion. That's what filtering the data segment looked like. But after a week's effort, the enthusiasts received an image of 5 speckled clusters against a blank background. After that, the speculation on the meaning of this picture started. Could the message be hinting at the alien's appearance? Was it Morse code? Maybe it hid some genetic secrets? One user even enlisted ChatGPT to help decipher the message. There was also a theory that the image was a star map with the location of the alien civilization. Another suggested that the dots resembling constellations could be molecules. Probably, they were part of the biosignature of the foreign world. But decryption is the process of making sense of some message for which only the intended recipient has a key. That's why this kind of code breaking is much more difficult than decoding, because you need to guess the missing key. Another tricky part is where to start. Every attempt feels like a stab in the dark. You might believe that you have started to see patterns, but you need to stop and think whether it's true or you're just projecting. The community is still trying to decode the message. At the moment, there are more than 30 ideas for how to do it. Only after that can people try to understand its full meaning. How about you? Would you like to try and take part in the process? Maybe you've got some idea? Then share them with us.
Hi everyone! Today we'll be talking about the controversial music that astronauts once heard in space. A few years ago, NASA made public the recording of a bizarre music that the astronomers from Apollo 10 reported hearing in May 1969, while they were flying over the far side of the moon. At that moment, they were out of radio contact with Earth. This happened months before the first astronaut set foot on the lunar surface. There were 3 people on board: Thomas Stafford, John Young, and Eugene Cernan. The sounds lasted for about an hour. Astronomers managed to record them and transmit them to Mission Control in Houston. Now, I want you to listen to these whistling sounds.
That music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? You hear that? That whistling sound? Yeah.
Don't they resemble some kind of otherworldly outer space music? So the question is, could the astronauts have heard alien music coming from outer space? Well, there's another more simple, non-alien involving explanation for this cosmic phenomenon, but we'll talk about it a bit later. In the audio recording from the Apollo 10 mission, astronaut Eugene Cernan, who was piloting the lunar module, could be heard asking John Young, piloting the command module, if he could hear that whistling sound. Cernan was the first one to call these sounds music and to add that they were kinda outer spacey. Later, when the 2 astronauts asked Tom Stafford, who was in the lunar module with Cernan, if he could hear the sounds too, he confirmed it and stated that they were really weird. Young suggested they should find out more about them. Nobody will believe us, he added. Apollo 10 was a mission that paved the way for Apollo 11, which landed 2 humans on the lunar surface. The Apollo 10 astronauts flew to the moon in a command module. However, 2 of the crew members also had a ride in the lunar module, which allowed them to drop down to less than 10 miles above the moon's surface. So, since they managed to approach our natural satellite so closely, could they have heard something coming from the lunar surface? Well, apparently not. Turns out that the creepy whistling sound was nothing more than some interference between the VHF radios on the 2 different vehicles. Interestingly enough, Apollo 11 astronaut Michael Collins later wrote in his book, Carrying the Fire, that NASA technicians had warned him about the whistling. He also mentioned that if he hadn't known about the origins of this music, it would have scared him to no end. In 2008, NASA shared the transcripts of the Apollo 10 transmission, but according to the documents themselves, they were declassified in 1982. In 2012, NASA also shared the audio files online. If you listen to these files, you'll hear that the astronauts sound sincerely awed and puzzled by what they hear. Moreover, they bring it up over and over again. It's also worth mentioning that you never actually feel that the 3 men were panicked or alarmed while going over the transcript or the audio. Some sources put particular emphasis on the fact that the space music started when the astronauts were over the far side of the moon. They didn't have radio or visual contact with mission control for about an hour, something that had been expected. Some documentaries used this moment to create tension by saying things like, the astronauts were on their own. No one on Earth could see or hear them. However, the narrators never explained why the astronauts' isolation could have been such a significant factor. By no means was it connected to the not-so-mysterious sounds undersold. There's another interesting element to this story that we should consider though, and it's the fact that Apollo 10 astronauts never discussed this incident and the sounds publicly. However, it's still unclear whether they talked about it with NASA engineers. This makes some people speculate that the astronauts didn't want to project anything but a rock-hard psyche. Showing a drop of confidence even once during the whole mission could have left them out of the whole project. Hi, my name is Martin. I am the author of this channel, and today I'll tell you all about the evidence of astronauts meeting with unidentified things at the time of observation. It's the year 1962, and American John Glenn is orbiting Earth in his Friendship 7 capsule on the Mercury Atlas 6 flight. He looks out of the window and sees fireflies.
Well, maybe those are not fireflies, but he clearly sees some weird bright specks clustered around the ship. Unsurprisingly, he tries to find a logical explanation. Can they be ice crystals from the spacecraft's hydrogen peroxide attitude control rockets? But Glenn is unable to correlate their appearance with the use of the rockets. The mystery remains unsolved.
Only much later will we find out what those fireflies were. You see, spaceships tend to accumulate clouds of debris and contamination around themselves. And when Glenn's rockets sprayed jets of crystals, many of these crystals accumulated in the cloud. They reflected sunlight and interacted with other gases, looking like tiny sparkles. The case of the mysterious fireflies is now officially solved.
But it isn't the darkest space tale. One of the most famous cases of seeing bizarre stuff in space comes from Apollo 11. That's when Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins noticed a UFO pacing along with them during their flight to the moon. That's how the astronauts described this incident. We did watch a slow blinking light some substantial distance away from us. There was something out there, close enough to be observed. The period of uncertainty was rather brief. The astronauts and ground control soon identified the object. It was one of the 4 adapter panels that fit between the 3rd stage and the lunar module. These panels were ejected from the 3rd stage, and one of them continued along the same trajectory as the lunar module with the crew. While moving, it rotated and blinked when sunlight was reflected off its surface.
Another famous and truly creepy picture hinting at the presence of alien life on the moon was taken by the crew of Apollo 16.
As the astronauts were leaving our natural satellite, they made a video, and 4 seconds of it showed a near-perfect Hollywood flying saucer leaving behind a plasma trail. For more than 30 years, enthusiasts used this video to prove that aliens had paid us a visit.
But then, scientists decided to take the matter into their own hands. They realized that, when viewed from the window through which the video had been taken, the object in the film was actually consistent with a small floodlight sticking out from the side of the capsule on a boom.
Look, from this angle, the floodlight looks exactly like a flying saucer. And the boom, indeed, looks like that plasma trail. And do you see this? Those are a couple of bolts on the boom.
Another report that inspired UFO enthusiasts came from Gemini 7. Astronauts Frank Borman and Jim Lovell were making what was called a football maneuver. It was supposed to get them into a position where they would make recurring close approaches with their Titan II booster stage every orbit.
But when they were performing this maneuver, Barman reported bogey at 10 o'clock high. We have several, looks like debris, up here, actual sighting. We also have the booster in sight. Yeah, have very, very many. Look like hundreds of little particles banked on the left out about 3 to 4 miles. It looks like a path to the vehicle at 90 degrees. They are past now, They were in polar orbit. Lovell claimed that the booster was in sight too, slowly tumbling along with the debris cloud. Does it mean that Bogman's bogey particles couldn't have been the booster or booster debris? After all, they were moving in a different direction, traveling along a different trajectory. Well, not necessarily. Later analysis showed that those particles were ice flakes from leftover fuel from the Titan II.
As you see, astronauts often report seeing weird stuff out there, but NASA's reaction is often anticlimactic. Let's have a look at how they commented on the statements of an astronaut who claimed to have witnessed alien presence in space.
NASA doesn't track UFOs. NASA is not involved in any sort of cover-up of alien life on this planet or anywhere else in the universe.
We should also remember that unidentify doesn't necessarily mean positively identify as an alien spacecraft. There's a lot of objects in orbit, and a lot of stuff travels along every mission. So, we'll always have UFO reports as long as we have space programs.
Imagine living in a world where technology has reached its highest point. Your daily routines are orchestrated by an AI, which anticipates your every need, from brewing your morning coffee to selecting a perfect evening outfit. The cityscape outside the window of your floating home is a marvel of efficiency. Flying pods whisk people to their destinations. Renewable energy sources power the giant megacity, creating an environment of pristine streets and clean air. At work, you have online meetings with colleagues living across galaxies, collaborating on projects that go beyond our current understanding. It sounds like a sci-fi story, but some extraterrestrial civilization might have already reached this level of development. Scientists started pondering the possibility of life beyond Earth long ago. They've been wondering what such life could look like and how humans could identify it from afar. This train of thought led to the development of several classification systems, including one called the Kardashev scale. It was proposed in 1964. This classification evaluates hypothetical alien civilizations based on how much energy they are able to harness. According to the scale, there are 3 types of civilizations. The first type is a technological level close to the current level of Earth. Type 2 is a civilization capable of harnessing the energy emitted by its own star. And the third type is a civilization that has learned to use the energy of an entire galaxy. This scale sure caught people's imagination. It was included in a 5-page paper called Transmission of Information by Extraterrestrial Civilizations. This work focuses on calculating how powerful a light signal from any point of the universe should be for us to detect it. Now, within the basic categories, humans are a Type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale. But some experts claim we aren't even a 1, since we haven't managed to harness the equivalent of the entire energy of Earth. This makes us more like 0.7, and of course, we're far from being a 2, a civilization with a working Dyson sphere. A Dyson sphere is a theoretical mega-engineering project encircling a star with platforms that are orbiting it in a tight formation. It might be the ultimate solution for living space and energy production. With its help, the creators of this ginormous construction could have loads of surface area for living and the ability to capture every tiny bit of solar radiation produced by their main star. As for a Type 3 civilization, it extracts fusion and exotic energy, information, and raw materials directly from their galaxy. This civilization is capable of space travel via wormholes, intergalactic communication via subspace, and galaxy-scale influence. They have supreme access to energy and are spread all over the universe. After millions of years of evolution, a Type 3 civilization may actually be AI superintelligences. Androids, cyborgs, and humans may be considered subspecies in such a highly advanced galactic society. In the most hopeful scenario, humans would have found a way to coexist with their AI masters. Or there might be no humans in that world whatsoever. This civilization might have already ascended into beings of pure energy, capable of controlling and directing machines to carry out all kinds of work. Now, back to the Kardashev scale. Even though it focuses only on technosignatures, it acknowledges biosignatures too, suggesting that each search should inform the other. The discovery of the simplest organism, for example, on one of Saturn's moons, could increase the probability that many Type 2 civilizations exist in our galaxy. At the moment, SETI is the main player in the field of looking for extraterrestrial civilizations. It's a combined effort of enthusiast scientists who focus on receiving and analyzing signals from space in the radio and visible light regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's looking for non-random patterns that have been likely sent deliberately by technologically advanced beings. The first modern SETI search was Project OMA in 1960. It used a radio telescope in Green Bank, Virginia. SETI uses targeted searches concentrating on groups of nearby sun-like stars.
It was the year 1952 when America first caught the flying saucer fever. A rash of strange sightings was reported in the skies over Washington, D.C. Were those unexplained radar blips, unidentified aircraft, or something much more outlandish? The Washington, D.C. sightings of the summer 1952 are also known as the Big Flap. But it all started in 1947 when a search and rescue pilot reported 9 saucer-like things flying like geese in a diagonal chain-like line. Their speed reportedly exceeded 1,000 miles per hour. Within mere weeks, the sightings of flying saucers were reported in 40 other states. Later, the explanations were found. The sightings were either hoaxes or misidentifications of known aircraft and natural phenomena, but a few cases remained unexplained. By 1952, the UFO investigation unit called Project Blue Book had been founded. It was led by Captain Edward Rubbold. He and his team would have continued to investigate a few dozen sightings per month, but for the April 1952 issue of Life magazine, with an eye-catching headline, "There is a case for interplanetary saucers." The article made quite a convincing case. It spoke about 10 unexplained UFO incidents, claiming that the flying objects were extraterrestrial in origin. According to the Washington Post, after the appearance of the article, the number of UFO sightings grew more than sixfold, from 23 in March 1952 to 148 in June. By July, the UFO mania was in full swing. All that was missing was a spark. And it happened before midnight on Saturday, July 19th, 1952. An air traffic controller at Washington National Airport spotted 7 slow-moving objects on his radar screen. They were far from any civilian or military flight paths. He called his supervisor and joked about a fleet of flying saucers. Simultaneously, 2 other air traffic controllers at National spotted a bizarre bright light hovering in the distance. It suddenly dashed away at breakneck speed. At Andrews Air Force Base, located nearby, radar operators detected the same unidentified blips. Those were slow and clustered at first, but then they raced away at a speed higher than 7,000 miles per hour. One Andrews controller looked out of his tower window and spotted something he later described as an orange ball of fire with a tail. A commercial pilot flying over the Virginia and Washington, D.C. area saw 6 streaking bright lights resembling falling stars without tails. 2 jets were sent to search for the UFOs, but every time they got close to the locations shown on the radar screens, the weird blips would disappear. By dawn of July 20th, the objects were gone altogether. Ruppelt, the lead investigator of Project Blue Book, found out about the sightings just a few days later after flying to Washington, D.C. and reading news reports. He tried to get to National and Andrews to interview the radar operators and air traffic controllers, but wasn't allowed to take a government-issued car. He had to fly back to Ohio with nothing. In a few days, UFOs were back over the Capitol. The same radar blips appeared again. Radar operators were wondering whether those dozen or so objects could be caused by a temperature inversion. That's a common occurrence in DC's muggy, scorching summer months. It occurs when a layer of warm air forms in the low atmosphere. It traps cooler air beneath. In this case, radar signals can bounce off the layer at shallow angles and create an impression of near-ground objects in the sky. To be safe, 2 more aircraft were sent to chase down the unidentified targets. The jets raced to a location targeted by radar, only for the blips to disappear. Eventually, one of the plane pilots saw a bright light in the distance and gave chase. But even though he was flying at maximum speed, he didn't manage to overtake the lights. At a press conference, representatives of the Air Force offered the public some easy-to-swallow explanations, having opted for the temperature inversion theory. After that, UFO sightings dropped from 50 a day to 10.
The James Webb Space Telescope is an absolutely stunning piece of equipment, which is around 100 times more powerful than the Hubble Space Telescope, and the latter has managed to observe places that are around 13 billion light-years away. But recently, James Webb has outdone itself. It spotted something it wasn't supposed to see. Astronomers using the telescope have detected a supermassive black hole from when our universe was less than 600 million years old. Just a baby. This discovery is the most distant, actively feeding supermassive black ever observed. It's located at the heart of its host galaxy, designated Sears 1019. The black hole is also one of the smallest and least massive ones found in the early universe. It's equal to approximately 9 million suns. It might seem like a lot, but in reality, supermassive black holes often grow to billions of times the mass of our star. But what is so unusual about this find? And why are scientists having a hard time trying to explain it? You see, it's supposed to take way longer than 600 million years for a supermassive black hole to grow to its full potential. It happens when a black hole either feasts on surrounding matter or merges with a larger black hole. Even black holes similar to the one at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, which is almost 4.5 million times the mass of our sun, are supposed to be seen in the more recent universe. Well, to tell you the truth, scientists have long suspected that supermassive black holes could have existed in the early universe. But this theory has been proven only thanks to the JWST and its infrared eye. It has shown that the black hole Sears 1019 is actively munching on all the matter it can lay its hands on. Such feeding black holes are usually surrounded by swirls of gas and dust falling inside them. Such swirls are also called accretion disks. The gravitational force of a black hole heats this matter, which makes the disk shine bright like a diamond. Sorry, but that's not all. Strong magnetic fields produced in the process channel the matter to the poles of the black hole, and from time to time this matter is blasted out of there in twin powerful jets. They move at a speed that is close to the speed of light, which generates incredibly bright light. By the way, astronomers were watching the galaxy hosting the unusually old black hole as part of the Cosmic Evolution Early Release Synth survey. They saw the galaxy as it was when the universe, which is around 13.8 billion years old now, was a mere 570 million years old. Besides the main character of this video, scientists spotted 2 other black holes. Those probably appeared 1 in 1.1 billion years after the Big Bang, and 11 ancient galaxies that existed between 470 and 675 million years after the beginning of cosmic history. The coolest thing about all these discoveries is that until recently, all research about things that existed in the early universe was mostly theoretical. But now, with the help of the James Webb Telescope, astronomers can not only see galaxies and black holes at unimaginable distances, but they can also measure them. This isn't the only discovery connected with black holes made recently. For example, not so long ago, scientists saw 2 stars slow down in their orbits around black holes, and concluded it was most likely the result of drag produced by dark matter. It was the first time astronomers might have discovered some indirect evidence that huge amounts of dark matter could surround black holes. Now, about that dark matter. What is it, and what does it consist of? Our universe consists of normal matter, and dark energy. Normal matter, which is everything you can see with your own eyes or with the help of instruments, makes up around 5% of the universe. Since it's such a small fraction of the universe, maybe we shouldn't call it normal? Dark energy takes up around 68%, and about 27% of the universe is dark matter. This dark matter is just one more space thing that confuses scientists to no end. If dark energy is a force responsible for the expansion of the universe, dark matter is supposed to explain how objects work together. Potential candidates for dark matter vary from strange particles to super-dim objects. But even though astronomers can't grasp what exactly dark matter is, they know for sure what it isn't. This matter is dark, so we can rule out visible stars and planets. It also can't be dark clouds of normal matter. Otherwise, scientists would be able to detect it. Dark matter is not antimatter, since astronomers don't see unique gamma rays that appear when antimatter comes in contact with matter. And neither is dark matter gigantic galaxy-sized black holes. In other words, dark matter is still as much of a mystery to us as dark energy. Anyway, back to the potential dark matter discovered around the black holes. If it is confirmed, it'll be a great breakthrough in dark matter research. What helped scientists come up with this idea is that dark matter interacts gravitationally, influencing ordinary matter. So, a team of researchers watched the orbits of two stars decay by about 1 millisecond per year, while they were circling their companion black holes. The scientists concluded that these changes in speed were the result of dark matter generating friction and a drag on the stars. With the help of computer simulations of the black hole systems, the team tested a model widely known in cosmology. It's called the dark matter dynamic friction model, and it predicts a certain loss of momentum by objects that are gravitationally interacting with dark matter. And guess what? The simulation matched these predictions. The results of this research helped to confirm a theory that had existed for a long time, that black holes can actually swallow dark matter that comes too close. As a result, dark matter gets redistributed around black holes, creating areas with different densities, which can influence the orbits of surrounding objects, like the stars we've been talking about. Speaking of black holes, there's a theory that primordial black holes could actually be dark matter. This type of black hole is hypothetical since scientists have never got any real proof of their existence. Such holes are insanely old and quite tiny, by black hole standards, that is. Astronomers believe they could appear several milliseconds after the Big Bang. At that time, stars and galaxies weren't born yet. It means primordial black holes probably witnessed the entire history of the universe. By now, the smallest primordial black holes have most likely evaporated away, but some bigger ones can still be scattered out there in space. If primordial black holes indeed existed, they could appear because in some regions of space, it was hotter, other regions were cooler, and some areas were extremely dense. Scientists believe these dense spots could collapse into primordial black holes. The most curious thing, though, these holes might be so small exactly because they popped up right after the Big Bang. The thing is, the longer it took a black hole to appear, the larger it was. The mass difference between older, smaller, and younger, bigger black holes was incredible. Compare the mass 1,000 times greater than our sun's and that of a pea. There you go. Anyway, the idea of the connection between primordial black holes and dark matter, or rather, the idea of them being the same thing, remained unpopular for decades. But recently, scientists have realized there are many more black holes in the universe than they used to think, and it means that the theory might actually work. And the vast and still hidden from us population of Big Bang black holes could not only make up but be dark matter. After all, astronomers haven't discovered a single dark matter particle yet, even after decades of searching.
You already know about black holes, giant space vacuums that pull inside everything in their way. But have you ever heard of a space phenomenon called white holes? And what would happen if these two met and, let's say, collided? Let's hop on a shuttle, venture into space, and get to know them better first. As you already know, you can't see black holes directly, even with fancy telescopes that detect light, X-rays, or other types of electromagnetic radiation. But we can see what a black hole does to the things that surround it. For example, when a black hole passes through a cloud of space matter, it pulls everything towards itself in a process called accretion. As the matter is pulled in, it becomes hot and emits detectable X-rays. Or something else can happen. Sometimes, a regular star comes too close to a black hole and gets torn apart. A black hole is a super dense object with an incredibly strong gravitational pull that starts stretching the poor star out into a long and thin shape like spaghetti. You've probably guessed it, we call this spaghettification. As the pieces of the star are pulled in, they become hot and emit X-rays. A black hole can choose a different method too, squishing the star and making it flat like a pancake. In the other corner, you have a mysterious white hole. These are less well known because we don't have much information about them. Our knowledge of white holes is based on theories derived from the same mathematical equations used to describe black holes. To witness this battle, you would need to get close to a white hole. But don't worry, at least this one won't eat you and turn you into spaghetti or a pancake. Just like nothing can escape a black hole, nothing can enter a white hole. It's like the most exclusive club in space with no entry allowed. You can see that white hole also has a mass and even spin. There might be a ring of dust and gas around its outer edge, known as the event horizon, which acts as a border separating the white hole from the rest of the universe. While they share similarities, there's one crucial difference. A white hole can release matter and energy, while a black hole cannot. Scientists describe a white hole as the time reversal of a black hole, as if you're watching a video of a black hole played backwards. Things that are already inside a white hole can leave and interact with the outside world. However, nothing from outside space can ever affect the secretive inner world of a white hole. Einstein said that space and time are not flat. They can bend and fold. All because things like stars and planets have mass. A scientist named Carl Schwarzschild figured out how to use Einstein's ideas to describe what happens around a really heavy object. He discovered something called a singularity. It's a point of infinite density, and it lies at the center of a black hole. It's like a tiny, tiny point where everything is squished together, all the matter that the black hole has consumed. The tricky part is that the singularity is so small that it doesn't really make sense in our normal understanding of time and space. Plus, it bends space around it so much that it creates a special area that's cut off from the rest of the universe. We call this area a no man's land, which is basically where black holes exist. Scientists still can't understand what happens at the point of singularity in black holes, let alone white holes. So let's go back to the questions we started the story with. What's stronger, and what would win then? It seems black and white holes have completely different strategies. A white hole is a mystery that we still don't know much about, but it seems more experienced at conquering space than a black hole is. I mean, a black hole swallows matter and everything it encounters, true. But a theory suggests that white holes may have once been black holes. They're purely imaginary for now, but stories say white holes can only exist if there is absolutely no matter inside their boundaries. If even the smallest particle entered a white hole, it would cause it to collapse. That's a significant disadvantage in a potential battle, don't you think? But it's also a really tough task to try to sneak a small asteroid inside a white hole. Its gravity is most likely extremely powerful and will push you away. This is where the singularity comes into play. Remember when I said scientists were not sure what really happens with this tiny, tiny dot of infinite density? It can't be that a black hole just infinitely collects matter in its center. Something else has to be happening there. What if this singularity kind of rebounds and actually becomes a white hole? Of course, it would take a really long time for this to happen. Like billions of years, even for the smallest black holes. There's a special type called primordial black holes, and scientists think those probably formed right after the universe was born. And if there were really tiny black holes created after the Big Bang, they might have already exploded and turned into white holes. Some scientists even think white holes could possibly explain the Big Bang, since both involve an enormous amount of matter and energy appearing out of nowhere. All this doesn't sound promising for a black hole. Can this be the first time ever it's gonna lose? If a black hole becomes a white hole, it doesn't even matter how much it's consumed. It might throw everything back out into space. In that case, a white hole might not last that long, so it will need to make a move against its opponent really quickly. Whoa, you may have thought you were safer near the white hole because it wasn't about to eat you. But look at it! It's shaking! Oh no, it started ejecting all the things it's been keeping inside at the speed of light. Get out of the way to not have some ripped planet catapulted in your direction. After millions, even billions of years of making a mess all around the universe, a magnificent, spectacular, and chaotic battle is about to start. The black hole is patiently taking the attack, pulling in everything that the white hole is throwing in its direction. Asteroids, all those ripped stars that used to shine so brightly in the night sky, planets, and even entire galaxies, it's all getting out of it insanely fast and in all directions. Both the white and black hole have managed to survive against every space object till now, but that's just because they haven't faced each other yet. It's an exhausting battle that doesn't stop. All odds were against the black hole at the beginning. But look, it seems something is changing. The white hole is slowly losing energy since it can't swallow any new things and renew its supplies. Meanwhile, the black hole is patiently collecting everything its opponent has thrown at it during this fierce attack, growing bigger and bigger. It can keep doing it for thousands of years. Its insanely strong gravity brings the white hole closer, even though it's trying to escape. And the time comes for the last strike. The black hole's gravity starts stretching its enemy until it swallows it entirely. The white hole is completely gone, and now that it has so much energy, our winner is more massive and stronger than ever. Oh no! Run! Now you have this hungry supermassive black hole wandering around looking for more things to eat, until it falls apart into a white hole again one day and starts an even bigger, more magnificent battle that the entire universe will watch.
You know how it goes. As the years pass, common knowledge slips away faster than you can say, "What's that thingamajig for?" Just think. Our grandkids will probably be scratching their heads over the buttons on our old school phones. So it's no wonder that some ancient artifacts have got us all stumped too. Take a look at this funky object. Any guesses on what it is? A musical instrument, a toy, or maybe something out of this world? Beats me, and even the experts have no exact answer. This little guy is a Roman dodecahedron, discovered by some amateur archaeologists near Lincoln, England. It's shaped like a fist and made of a mix of metals. Now, as for what this thingy was used for, that's the million-dollar question. Supposedly, these guys were all the rage back in the day in northern Gaul and Roman Germany. According to some ancient maps, similar dodecahedrons have turned up in Europe, Britain, and even along the maritime Silk Road in Southeast Asia. The plot thickens as more and more of these dodecahedrons pop up. Some had wax inside, leading scientists to think they were candle holders. Others think they might have been used for knitting gloves, since none have been found in warmer regions. There's even one found in Geneva with zodiac signs etched on it, sparking some woo-woo theories about fortune-telling. And now a fresh discovery has got everyone's head spinning. Could this be some kind of sacred tool for the Romans? Who knows? Maybe it's the first multi-tool ever, invented way before Swiss Army knives were a thing. Carved stone balls from Scotland are another historical mystery. They most likely date back to the late Neolithic period, and come in various types, from sandstone to granite. They're all roughly the same size and have intricate, evenly spaced patterns of circular bosses or knobs. Most of these designs have 6 bosses, but the number can range from 3 to 160. Some of these balls are more skillfully crafted than others, and a few even have extra decorations. There are over 400 carved stone balls and mostly found in Scotland, although some have turned up in northern England and Ireland. These stone balls rarely show signs of damage or use, and there are no clues that would give away their function. Most experts think they weren't practical tools, but had some symbolic or social importance, probably a sign of power or prestige within their communities. The Folkton drums are the 3 stone cylinders from Neolithic Britain, discovered in the late 19th century in a burial mound in East Yorkshire. Nothing similar has been found anywhere else in the British Isles from any prehistoric period. Each drum is decorated with unique designs covering the sides and domed tops. The decorations are mostly geometric, arranged in panels with stylized human faces peeking out from 2 of the drums. Recent studies of the artifacts using new technologies show that the designs had been carved and recarved over time. A team of experts also analyzed the composition of the drums, and it turns out that they were made from local chalk. In the late Bronze Age in Europe, long before coins became common, finely crafted metal objects served as portable wealth and symbols of high status. Across Europe, archaeologists have found all sorts of artifacts, from gold adornments worn by elites to large bronze cauldrons used in feasts. Beautifully decorated gold rings discovered in Wales are among these items. They're known as lock rings and may have been used to hold hair. Now they're flattened after spending nearly 3,000 years underground. They used to have cone-shaped openings at each end. They were found at different times, but were likely worn as a pair and buried together in a single hoard. Other Roman artifacts made of the copper alloy were first catalogued as lunate pendants. But during a recent re-examination, experts found that these items were actually small mortar and pestle sets, known as cosmetic grinders. They were used to grind minerals for makeup and were specifically designed for applying liner and shadows to the eyes. They were mistaken for pendants because of suspension loops that allowed them to be carried on a cord. These cosmetic sets from the 1st century of the current era were unique to Britain. They prove the influence of imported cosmetics and beauty trends from the Mediterranean and Roman provinces, including Egypt. The Salzburg Cube, also known as the Wolf's Egg Iron, was discovered in the late 19th century in Austria. It doesn't really look like a cube, but is more like a rounded object with 2 flat sides. Down the middle, it has a groove, and the surface is covered with pits and craters. Workers accidentally found this artifact when they blew apart a piece of coal. The coal seam it came from is thought to be over 60 million years old. The Salzburg Cube moved between museums, mysteriously vanished in the early 20th century, and then showed up again. Some researchers thought it must be a Victorian-era candlestick holder, but still, no one knows the true story of the cube or its current location. Archaeologists have unearthed an incredible historical find in Pakistan, an ancient sphinx estimated to be around 12,500 years old. The region where it was found was once a busy center of the ancient Indus Valley civilization. It had advanced urban planning, intricate art, and sophisticated drainage systems. The discovery of the ancient Sphinx is a good example of their progressive art. We all know of the Great Sphinx of Giza, but what was the significance of the Sphinx in the Indus Valley culture? Their Sphinx has designs and carvings that show scenes with their daily activities, which means it may have had a more complex role than a symbol of power or guardian. It could stand for a balance between humans and nature, or even a deity associated with agriculture. Arequipa in Chile sits on the sandy dunes of the Atacama Desert, known as the driest desert in the world. Long before this coastal town was built in the 16th century, the Chinchorro people called this region their home. Archaeologists found hundreds of their mummies. Radiocarbon dating showed that these mummies are over 7,000 years old, which makes them 2,000 years older than the famous Egyptian mummies. The Cinchoro used special techniques to preserve the mummies, not just relying on the dry climate for that. And unlike the Egyptians, they didn't just do it for the elite members of their society, but for everyone, no matter what age or status they had. The local people living in Aruca now are so used to finding mummies in their backyards that they don't feel weird about living among them. In the winter of 1850, a powerful storm with extra high tides hit the west coast of Orkney, Scotland. The wind and waves ripped away the surf, covering a mound, and revealed stone-built structures beneath. A local antiquarian decided to dig up the village that he thought was from the Iron Age. He managed to unearth the remains of 4 houses and many artifacts from 2 villages. The villages had been buried under sand, so everything was really well preserved. Carbon dating wasn't a thing back then yet, so it was tricky to tell the exact age of the villages. Almost a century later, with new tech, researchers were finally able to tell that the place was actually from Neolithic times. You can still see stone dressers and box beds in the prehistoric houses. Archaeologists and historians working on the famous Terracotta Army think that it might have been inspired by or modeled on ancient Greek sculptures. It would mean there was a cultural contact between East and West much earlier than we thought, long before the Silk Road trade route. There was probably Western influence in China during the era of its first emperor, who took the throne in 246 before the current era. Before that time, China didn't have a tradition of building life-sized sculptures. Earlier terracotta soldiers were much smaller, less than 10 inches tall. Greek artists might have even been present to train Chinese sculptors.